Good morning.
Ben, I think we synced that.
We kind of did, I guess. Yeah. I'm not going to lie, for a little split second, because I knew you didn't have your headphones on and you wouldn't be able to hear my chair not moving, I was tempted not to roll in. Just to watch from the side as you just...
No, because this happened 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And when I was like, you just vanished off screen. I was like, oh, Ben's obviously doing something because I can just see his shadow barely moving in the distance. So he's clearly busy. So we can't start the stream just yet. So no, that's not going to become a fixed thing that we do around these parts. How's everybody doing?
Good. How's everyone in chat? How's everyone? Welcome to the studio, to our live studio audience, and then to anyone watching at home during daytime TV. Or whenever you watch VODs. When do you watch these, if you watch these on VODs?
I never watch these.
I was there. I need to... I'm good. I'm looking forward to this weekend. I think I can tell everybody at home. I'm heading into Declan's. Myself and my wife are going to head down and we're going to hang out with Declan and his husband.
I'm also looking forward to it. I will just tell you, it has completely stressed out my husband, and we have literally been bleaching the walls of our house.
Why? I've been there.
That's why we're bleaching the walls.
Kim will be honored. This level of detail and attention doesn't go in when I'm coming down to record. When I'm part of the collectively and lovingly called Declan's Nerd Friends. Yeah. When I'm in that group.
When he usually leaves the house because you're all there.
Yeah. Ugh, stick a nerd around this place. I'm going to go off and be a jock.
Oh, yeah, that's my husband, the jock.
But I am very much looking forward to it. We're going to take the train and have a lovely weekend together.
That reminds me to check with you at times. We're not going to dox you right now. Hey, Ben, what train and what platform are you getting it from?
I'm in seat 17, carrot C. I actually don't know. It would be wild if that was true. Not that anyone, if someone was watching and saw me, please do come up and say hello. I will literally talk about TTRPGs to no end. So I would love that. Today, speaking of talking about TTRPGs, that's what this show is. That's what we do around here. We don't just let you in on our plans that you're not invited to. But today specifically, we're going to talk about performance at the table. Creativity at the table a little bit as well, using a few improv tricks. We sat down and we had an interview with Erin McGathy, who you might know from Harmon Quest, you might know from Dungeons and Dragons when they were doing live streams during kind of COVID times. There was streams there. You'll know from Mob Theatre Dublin and Dungeons and Dragons Live. You'll know from Dream Gun Film Reads. You'll know from their own work as well. If you are in Dublin this coming September, Erin has a show on during the Dublin Fringe called Sketcherella, which is the 15th, 16th, and 17th. And speaking of doxing me, if you want to come hang out, I'm going on the 17th. Come along. So we're going to chat pretty much all things creativity. It's going to be the theme over the next couple of episodes. This one and then the one in about 2 weeks as well. We've got a wonderful interview coming up with Jacob Wolf-Lefton, also a TTRPG performer, actor, and wonderful person. So yeah, we talked about world building, we talked about crunch, we talked about failure and successes. Now let's get into being present at the table.
Yeah, it's one of those things I think that we can kind of. I think it's one of the things that puts people off in some way. Because it's the thing of like, oh, I'm not funny. Oh, I'm not an actor. It's like, none of those things. I can be funny, but like it doesn't mean I guess that's what we want to talk about. Like what level of performance is required? What do you need to do? And all the different ways in which you can approach that. And like that, share some tips and tricks from others in this space. Ben and I will be talking about it from our perspective as DMs and as players, things that we do. And like Ben said, we are going to be looking at creativity. And an aspect of it that it's going to be one of our later shows, but one of the things that I want to specifically talk about when we kind of get into this space is creative burnout. and
yeah.
dealing with that. So it's not just going to be, and this is why it's great to be in TTRPGs, and this is why it's such a creative release, where we want to look at all facets of what it means to be a creative, and the mindfulness that goes into it, and taking care of yourself. That's for a little later on. For today, though, we want to know, how do you get into character? Like, do you have any tips or tricks? What kind of mindset do you get into? I know, hey Zool44, I know a good few people have, like, from the Romancing the Dungeon crew. Like, they do certain things kind of the night before or even the morning before, to kind of get them into the character mindset. So are there things that you do when it comes to your characters, whether you're the DM or the players? And I'd love to hear from DMs on that, because we're often the ones playing multiple characters. And how do you manage kind of flip-flopping between both? If we've time, I have a wonderful anecdote from the first season of Romance in the Dungeon that I will get into. Maybe we'll see.
I think we've plenty of time. That sounds like we've loads of time. That sounds like all the time in the world to get into. It sounds like it's going to be embarrassing. We can make time for this.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. And some of it made it into the show. A lot of it didn't. But I think that is a good point to maybe jump into our interview with Erin.
Yeah, because it's a nice jumping off point for everything we're going to talk about for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Give me and
a big on a roll welcome to our special guest this episode, Erin McGathy.
Hello. Just rolling in here.
Yes, just rolling with it. Thanks. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone watching, you'll know Erin from the internet, from a plethora of D&D and TTRPG and different games, and also as one of the Right to Say founders and one of the producers behind Mob Theatre in Dublin, which you can find on mobtheatre.ie. Yep. They have shows every Thursday, one of which is sometimes is a D&D themed show with Steve, that's Dungeons and Dragons, but they have so much else going on. So if you are in the Dublin area, do head by on Thursday evenings, and you might see Erin there, but you'll also see a fantastic show guaranteed every time. We are here to talk a little bit about that, but through the lens of playing games with friends. So with that in mind, for anything I might have missed introducing you, and for anything you might want to tell the audience about, could you tell us a little bit about you as first and foremost, as a person and a performer?
God, as a person, wow. As a performer, I'd say, like, I'm mostly an improvisational performer, improvisational comedian, almost a key median. We were talking before we started about how I'm very comfortable without rehearsal, and that is clear. But yeah, I do mostly improv comedy and sketch comedy, and I suppose it was like 10 years ago or so when I started doing live D&D comedy shows. Started doing it before I really understood what D&D was, but I was let know, like I was alerted to that fact immediately by the good people of Reddit. So
yes, yeah. They're always kind and always critical in constructive ways, I find.
Yeah. No, I feel like they made me better.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
We'll cut straight into it. So we're talking a little bit about the crossover between TTRPGs and sort of performers, theater kids, improvisers, comedians. There's a nice like Venn diagram where it sort of fits away from the number crunching, here's my stats, here's my min-maxing stuff that some people love, and more into the here's my character and here's how to bring them to life at the table. And I was wondering, in your opinion, do you think there is anything about tabletop games or role-playing games that appeals to theater kids?
Yeah, I'd say the thing about tabletop games that appeals to theater kids, and I love that you say theater kids, because when you say theater kids, I immediately picture like Glee,
right? Yes, yeah.
Which isn't, not totally wrong, but I think it's all collaborative creativity, and or to make it even more simple, it's just, playing with other people in a different space, for better or worse. And that is definitely what role playing is. And yeah, I think it's just more make 'em ups.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
comes from that same space of like you're a kid and you're playing make believe, and then usually parents are like, "Go do that in front of your aunts and uncles." We entertain them, and
Yeah.
that can sometimes find yourself in the back of a game store playing make believe with your friends.
Totally. Yeah.
Are there any tips or tricks as a trained improvised comedian that you've picked up that you think would apply to DMs or players and that they could bring to their games?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say that when I started doing D&D, and I was doing it in front of an audience, not really like, I've always been very into fantasy, and was very aware of D&D, but wasn't aware of um all the number crunching, as you call it. And I think, like, when I started doing it, I was like, "Oh, we can make up and do anything." And you can't really do anything, but I'd say that, like, if my improv background is helpful at all, it's just with, like, making choices. And I feel like anytime for me, when I've been playing, when I've felt like, fuck, like, I don't like what I'm doing right now, or I've made a weird choice and now I have to live in it. Like, it's more the pain over not making a choice, or feeling like you can undo the choice. And I think, yeah, the improv thing that's helpful is, like, getting to a choice, and I think also focusing more on your fellow players and that interaction versus your own shit is massively helpful.
Yeah, and I think you touch upon something nice about a game, especially a home game, is that if you do make a choice in a session and you're not all that happy with it, well, guess what? You're probably going to meet in a week or two or a month or
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
And characters do evolve. They're hopefully three-dimensional, personalities. So it's
Yeah.
always a chance to learn. And I do love that about the game, that you can kind of make a choice, see how it feels, see how it fits, and
Yeah.
go, oh, maybe I won't, you know, go down this road. And sometimes those big choices in games, I don't know if you've found this, it's like other players who are good at this, they'll kind of they'll see what you're going for, and they'll either reward the choice, or they'll start kind of gaming the scene a little bit and kind of bringing that to the forefront a bit more, which I love. Which leads me to my
Mm.
next question, which is, that's talking about improvised skills into the table, but have you had any moments, or has there been anything where something at the table has informed your life the other way? Something you've experienced and you're like, oh wow, my D&D character taught me something.
Ooh. That's a great question. I'd say, I mean, my first reaction to that is that, like, it definitely, for better or worse, helps me learn more about my friends that I'm playing with.
Yes.
But gosh, um, yeah, I've never really thought about that the other way around. Oh, actually, yes, there was, well, two things. Like, I used to be a part of a podcast, Harmontown, that I did with my ex-husband and our friends, and it was very, like, incestuous, in that it was just like pals and then performing on stage, and then we also played our own private game at home. And there are definitely choices that I would make with my character, who is a half elf ranger, who I wound up uh way out, like, what is the politically correct way to say dying by suicide in in RPG
Right.
world?
Self-sacrificing? Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, I was listening to a lot of negative feedback about my character from people who, and, like, honestly, and I'm not just, like, chalking this up to like general misogyny, but I think a lot of it at the time was a bit misogynistic, and I didn't know how to let that kind of roll off my back, or see that for what it was. And I also let that drown out any positive feedback at all,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
It's also not on you to have to, like, it's like,
No, no, no.
yeah,
Yeah, I
right.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I should, like, yeah. clear. You're my therapist, right? And this is
Yes, yeah, sorry.
okay, good. This is BetterHelp. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so like with that character, because I was getting all this negative feedback, I was like, well, clearly they just hate this character. So they'll be really happy if I would just take out the character. And then they were way more frustrated by
Yeah.
that. But that's all to say that like when I played a new character who I felt was like more close to who I was, I I learned that actually that like the things in this like half elf ranger character that was also me, and it felt, I don't know, like playing something that was like slightly different from who I am in real life, but also, I don't know, it's interesting playing on taking on different uh, uh, personality traits that you wouldn't include in your own narrative or in the story of your own ego. And I feel like more, I'm taking anything from it, it's just kind of teaching you things about your own self and kind of clearing up the story or self-limiting story that you might tell yourself in your waking life.
Yeah, I think that's so, like, it's so powerful and so important that there's, scales of personality, and you wouldn't necessarily put in the I fight everyone I come across all the way up to 10.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
but it's a lovely lesson to have, and especially when the table is a good table and a safe table, you can explore those aspects of yourself, which is,
Yeah.
often traits shared by good directors and good collaborators and good performers give you the freedom to make those mistakes.
And your friends, if you're playing with people who you are pals with, which you hopefully are, likely are, like allowing your friends to try on different things is a huge thing.
Yeah, I think it's very generous of people to do that for their friends. It's a really nice thing to see in this space. Now, obviously, you lift that carpet a little bit, and it's just gross, nothing but rats and horrible people.
Yeah, like, hey, can you stop murdering all of the barkeeps because it's making me afraid of you?
Yeah, exactly. So there's limits to play. And bringing it even back to that childhood play, I think we knew, when we were, on break from school, there was kids who took play too far, and you're like, okay, so we're not friends. That's good. Good to know. I'm gonna go to the other people. Yeah. I suppose there's plenty of lessons we can learn at the table, but to close us out for this interview, one, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode.
But really talk to you.
If there was someone who wanted to hone, say like a player or DM who wanted to hone their improv skills or their writing skills, and this is, to break kayfabe, a hell of a setup. Where would you recommend they go?
Well, look, I appreciate the plug setup, but even if I didn't run Mob, I would say this anyway. And I'd also say this in general, like if you're, and not to sound so hippie California about this, but like I think it is so immensely beneficial for your mental and spiritual health to engage in creative play as adults. And that is what improv is. Improv, there are like less, there are less structures and stuff. So it's a good thing. And I'll get to the actual question that you asked in a second. But improv is super great. So for anyone looking to work on their collaborative creativity or even just interpersonal stuff, mobtheater.ie. But yeah, for people who are running games, I would super highlight, I mean, I'd recommend improv and stuff, but and we have screenwriting classes and story structure classes. But beyond that, I'd recommend like reading stuff about story structure, learning about different genres and stuff. And I mean, people know this. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but yeah, I'd say writing classes and exploring different characters. I'd also recommend, and this is just a random like objective hot tip, because I teach screenwriting classes, and so I have like a massive reference library of things. you can look on Amazon. There are books that list different character. I don't know, just for creating stories and stuff. But yeah, I'm talking a lot. I'm on a lot of lemp sip. It's not really a good excuse because I'm chatty anyway. But yeah.
No, I love it, and it's there are even resources you can bring to the table. Like a lot of DMs bring their reference guides, their module guides, but why not bring a whole book of character traits? They just spin a page, tap a finger down. There's your NPCs.
Totally. I mean, like, because I teach improv and stuff, like a big thing obviously with improv, the whole thing is that you don't have a script, but our brains, like we can't expect to like access every person we've met in our life and every experience and every location or whatever just at all times. And so I recommend to people like that they look at like a kid's encyclopedia before going on stage just to like spark memories and shit like that. And I think having stuff like that for yourself as a DM or as a GM is really handy, and don't put pressure on yourself to just create things out of nowhere. And I don't mean that people are like reading stuff and they're like, okay, I'll talk about the Egyptian periods, I'll talk about I just said Egyptian periods. I'm sure they did have periods as well, but the pyramids are more famous than their menstrual periods. Yeah.
Mostly just because of the structure that they built to them, as opposed to
yeah, I only found that out recently, and it's we're
they left them there and all, which is nice of them, assuming they built them. I mean, well, that's a different podcast.
Also, improv classes for people who are running games is great for seeing how to best talk to different sorts of people and lead them through a creative sort of thing. Like even just by seeing how the instructor talks to the different people learn and respond and communicate different ways, and being able to not take that personally and learn more about the way that people do that will make it more enjoyable for you and everyone else.
Yeah, I couldn't recommend it. Couldn't recommend it more.
You couldn't recommend it? Well,
sorry, sorry, I couldn't recommend it.
Really
I couldn't
appreciate
recommend it more. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to cut back to the studio, but it was an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and have fun out there, live people.
Hello. We're back. Live in studio.
Yeah. Yes. Live. We were. I'm not.
We're not pre-recorded.
I'm pre-recorded. I'm just so psychic. I'm able to preempt.
If you were pre-recorded, I'd be the one who's practiced and rehearsed repeatedly to time my sentences with. That's right, Declan.
I am a huge fan of Erin's, and it was one of those things where I stumbled on them watching Harmon Quest. Like I just fell into that, and then I was like, "Oh my god!" And like seeing Erin on that show, and how quick and such a strong performer. That was a really fun interview. Like to kind of see. To get some of her insight into what she does and how she gets into kind of that headspace. I think that's the big thing, right? Or am I?
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where, like, I suppose we can jump straight into our approach, and we can jump into chat as well, because I'm conscious that everyone in chat will have seen it, but I know watching VOD doesn't get the joy of hearing some of the approaches and the kind of collective community share that happens over here on a roll. But one of the things when chatting with Erin, and it's always a reminder, I feel like I put all this prep into performing, and then I'm at the table and it's like, whoop, everything out the window. And it's just like a little monkey on a tricycle going around my brain being like, what's going on here? But that idea of making big choices, making kind of like big dramatic choices, is a really good shortcut into finding a character. Because I don't know about you, but especially in my life, I don't really go around my day-to-day making big choices that are going to cause drama and narrative and story. I don't go down to the coffee shop and like knock coffees out of people's hands.
Speak for yourself.
Dun-dum, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Oh no!
Why do you think I invited you? I invited you and Kim down this weekend. I have so much shenanigans and big decisions to put into place.
Nice. But it's a nice way to characters can be extreme like that, and it's a good way to differentiate them between yourself and people. But to jump into some of the comments in our chat, because our prompt is how do you get into characters, anything you do to help you prepare or kind of stay in character during the game. And Zul44 has said, the day before or hours before, I go over notes and I consider what spells, mechanics I might want to use and set them up, and look at my reminders of special abilities, so it frees up my brain for roleplay. So kind of like doing housekeeping on the mechanics. And then I think about how my character feels about the other party members, potential character interactions, and a couple of props as well. I find props.
Sorry, Ben. A couple of people in chat are just flagging that your mic is dipping in and out.
Dipping in and out? That might be because I'm not facing it, because I was facing chat.
Ben.
I might have been doing that thing that I hate. You usually see it at a wedding. People at weddings do, which is that giving a speech. So good to have the bride. Put our hands together. Come on.
That is literally what you've been doing. Like I just
my own worst enemy.
As you started doing that, like, oh, that's what's been happening.
Yes, probably.
Declan has one of these.
Yeah, let me move my mic so that it's in front of me as I look to chat and repeat those things. So I'll be quicker this time. Take two. Zils44 has said, the day before or hours before, I go over notes and consider what spells and mechanics I might want to use and set them up, and look at my reminders of special abilities. That frees up my brain for roleplay, which I think is great. I think it's really good to get housekeeping in terms of still dipping right in front of me.
I wonder,
is it because of my clip? Declan has to put an input gain limiter on me because I'm boisterous.
No, so I didn't even put I haven't put a noise gate. I just reduced your input. Is there a mic sensitivity on yours? Like, is there like a pre-built one, like where it's like maybe turned up or turned down? Because it's
no, I just have gain. Oh. I can turn it on, and it's pretty high.
Yeah,
it might be that this doesn't play nice with the video platform we're using.
Possibly.
It does say that sometimes. It doesn't like these. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn down my gain and then turn up my gain here, so that if it tries to clip me just talking louder but it being lower, that might do it.
And what I can do is I can then boost you in OBS.
Yeah.
So we'll do it that way. So if you want to give me a
1 2 1 2, this is usually where I am super low. That's probably because I've turned my gain down too far. Let me just go to a middle here.
But I pushed you up. I was pushing you up.
Better. No, I'm too loud. People's ears. No.
Okay. I think super low, better. Okay. Super low, better. We got it. Okay. So that's
better.
Yeah.
Better.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask him to go in and hold you steady.
Yes. Yeah. Strap me too in front of this microphone here. This gives me flashbacks when we used to do homebrew live in a room. I'm very this when I DM, and I would knock over cameras like an oaf, and I'd knock over mics, and I'd move in and out of them. So
yeah, it's dropped on you again, Ben.
Weird. Maybe I'll try. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to do this. How about if I turn it into this microphone here is on my camera.
Yeah. Now you just sound thin, but it's okay.
Thank you. But better.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're getting good from this in front of me here. That's all right. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me. Good to know this Yeti, which has served me well for, I don't know, coming up 15 years, isn't as good as just the camera that's and the microphone that's just in the camera. Okay, take 3. For anyone watching along, Emma's on fire, is on fire, and just said, Ben, have you considered not talking? No, I haven't. But funny enough, no audio issues when I'm not speaking.
Have you tried shutting up?
Yeah. No, I didn't say enunciate. I said shut the hell up. Project less. Okay. Why don't you take the comments in chat for the time being while I
While you take
go
a
to the
breath.
burn ward?
Okay. So Zool44 was one of the first answers we got. And the comment read, the day before or the hours before, I go over notes and consider what spells, mechanics I might want to use and set them up and look at my reminders of special abilities, so that frees up my brain for roleplay. Then I think about how my character feels about other party members and potential character interactions, and I have a couple of props too. So there's quite a lot in that's a process, I think, is the technical term that they would use on stage. But it's always very, very useful, I think, to kind of get those bits and pieces out of the way. Because like tabletop role-playing games are about immersion. Like, and when we're around the table, when we're playing the game, we want to focus on the story. We want to focus on what's happening. And oftentimes it's that moment of, hang on, let me just rifle through 4 pages of my character. There's a thing here on, rpgrules.cov, whatever, that says, X, Y, and Z. And actually on my character, I've got that. I think those things can break that immersion for people. So having the mechanics, having the abilities, the features, the spells, all that kind of worked out ahead of time does give you more room to think about the character that you were playing.
Yeah, I agree. And if anyone's interested in that specifically, myself and our guest for next episode, we dive deep into balancing performance with mechanics. It's sort of a 102 on the conversation for today. And using people often think mechanics and performance are in opposition to each other. They're kind of one at the expense of the other. And we do a lot of talking and discussing around how that isn't the case, or it doesn't have to be the case. I know that there was in chat agreement with Zool44 on that approach. Twiggy B111 also does something similar, giving that a little bit of time to look over the character sheet, check in with where they last were, and kind of touch base with what the character was feeling. Because you have to remember that most of the time, and the average group is probably weeks, if not months apart. So if you're in the middle of a very dramatic or emotion heavy scene, and then you go back to your regular day life and it's 2 months later and you sort of have to pick up where you left off, arguing with the demi-lich to not go through with their plans, it's very difficult to pick that up cold. So notes, always good. Declan, you look nervous. Have something happened to me?
No, there was just a very weird sound and I don't know where it came from.
I can tell you, looking behind you, either side, you're safe, at least from the immediate danger of anything nearby.
Okay, great. Thank you. I genuinely have no idea where that sound came from. And it wasn't even a bad sound. It was just kind of a humph sound. So I don't know. That's neither here nor there.
I would love if the subs just picked up you talking and then just went like fart noise, and it was like, where did that noise come from? I don't know. It was just sort of this like noise.
There was kind of a note from Abra Macabre about how they can, and I make so they wrote, I make playlists for all my characters which I listen to before playing them, helps me get into their headspace. I also certain songs, certain pieces of music will always help me kind of get into that transition of a character's headspace. Amber, who plays Hephaestus on Romancing the Dungeon, has made character playlists for herself as Hephaestus, and then kind of got everybody on board with make a playlist for your character and kind of get into that zone. And music is a great way of doing it, especially if it's going to be a recurring character and you can just make a playlist over on YouTube or Spotify or wherever it is that you're listening to your music. When it comes to getting into a character, the one thing that I one thing we definitely have to talk about kind of creating characters at some point as well. Like, kind of that's a whole other spiel. But something I often tend to do with a character is I've drawn inspiration from some aspects of characters I know. And like for Roz Greypurse from Romance in the Dungeon, one of my big go-tos there was actually Roz from Monsters Inc. for her voice, like, and even kind of her persona and appearance a little bit. Not the slug side of her, but more just the older lady side of her. Don't tell Roz I said that. But like, I will find myself, because I know Roz's voice is close to my Roz's voice. I will tend to like go into the always watching you, Mike Wazowski, always watch, and that just kind of helps trigger certain kind of characteristics and everything else with it, and it just makes it a bit easier to get into that headspace than for Roz. I also just think about money, and that also helps too.
money. I'm the same. I love making playlists. I'm going to drop a link in chat. This is AJ's Piston Poppin' playlist. So this is his sort of training mix, because he's a bit of a soldier and a bit of a jock. Although I will point out I'm happy to talk about my flaws here in a way. I find sometimes when I base a character, so in the case of AJ and Romancing the Dungeon, you had built AJ, but I had to kind of bring a personality to him. And I was doing a mix of like a happy-go-lucky, always inspirational sort of Ted Lasso sort of guy, a little bit of a sort of down on his luck, a little unsure of himself, Evan Hansen kind of guy. When it came to his leadership, a little bit like Jean-Luc Picard. And so I was absorbing all this like influence in media to be like, okay, that's good, or this is good. And I'd find myself sort of playing through scenes from those shows in AJ's voice. And what I found very difficult is that's him kind of, I felt as a player, I'm just kind of pretending to be these people and not really truly being a kind of three-dimensional AJ. To the point where like I might say a quote or a phrase that's verbatim from something that another character had said in like a different show. I'd be like, that doesn't feel good. So what I find helps a little bit more these days is having conversations with him and that constant sort of back and forth. And if I go out for like a walk in the evening, I might throw on AJ's playlist, not to help get into character, but to help bring his sort of opinions and outlook on life to the forefront of my brain, so that when we're in a situation, especially when it's like fast-paced, like heavy improv, knowing how AJ would react is easier when I know how he's already reacted to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it is that thing, and there's a question from Subpar Goat that I want to come back to, so don't go anywhere. I love weird enough, I'm not a big mad kind of crunchy kind of like, oh, the rules say this, blah blah blah, but I'm all for homebrewing something. But I been kind of speaking to your sort of like, and I think it actually kind of goes back to what Erin was saying as well, that sort of like thinking about my character in relation to the story. How are they going to react to what's just happened? When we finished that session, we left it with this. How are they feeling after that? And like, is there anything they wish they could have done differently, or that they could have said, or maybe going into the next play that I carried that with me. And again, I think Twiggy B had said this as well. It's easy for us because we record it and we can listen back to it. And that's a little bit more difficult if you are not recording it. And then obviously if you're not a great note taker either. Like if you are kind of sketchy on those details, it can be kind of hard to kind of keep that in mind. So I do think having kind of a core concept of, and whether it can just be that archetype, they're a bit of a loner. And this is going to sound awful. I was playing a home game. This wasn't a This wasn't a stream. This wasn't a podcast. This was one of those home games where you
not for consumption. What the hell?
It's very strange.
I've heard prophecy of such a thing.
I feel weird. I feel I wasn't creating content. I tell a lie. No, we were playing that on the stream.
Got him.
We were playing that on the stream. That's a lie. That's a bad liar. But I was playing a character who is very much based on, he's a rogue. I was playing him off as that kind of sad little emo boy kind of thing, and just very distant and not sure how to integrate. We were playing that. What's the magical school D&D thing?
Oh yes. I know what you're talking.
My brain. It's gone from my brain. And
it's a short. It's not a 1-page system, but it's short enough, right? It's like it's called like something in broomsticks.
No, it wasn't even a system. It was the D&D school.
Oh, right.
That chunk. But I actually like to get into Strixhaven. Thank you, Eerie Dude. Thank you. God, that was. I would have actually left this stream, gone, and then a week from now, going, it's called Strixhaven. So you've spared me that, Eerie Dude. Thank you. I would have been furiously texting Ben, it's called Strixhaven.
And I'm like, what?
What is?
Who is?
my new idea for a character. I actually, I don't mind sharing this. I actually played him a little bit like myself when I was in school, because he found, like, as a character, he was finding it very difficult to integrate with the party because he didn't really know how to. He didn't have friends. He had his 2 sisters. I didn't have any sisters. I had brothers, and he didn't really know how to integrate with the others. They were a party. It wasn't that I'm the lone wolf and I'm going off to do stuff. It's just we went to a dorm party, and it was like, what's everybody doing? And I was like, I'm sitting in a corner holding a cup, and I don't know how to talk to anybody, and I'm kind of feeling really anxious. And we'd gone through this whole thing of like everyone was getting ready, and like I was playing a Treant kind of homebrew class, or not class, race. So like my version of getting ready was he just grew some flowers, and like they were like it was a black dahlia actually, and he got so overwhelmed and so anxious in this moment that when everybody else was like, I'm off kissing the jock and I'm doing whatever, like, and everyone was having and it was so much fun to see all these other characters doing their thing. And there was a part who was like, oh, I'm just bringing it down. I'm just bringing the mood down because I'm the sad boy who doesn't know how to talk to anybody. And that's the character I want to play. That is, and my character isn't taking anything. My character is adding another dimension to the story. And what I'm kind of getting to is I was playing a character that I based on a 16, 17-year-old version of myself. And the one thing I will say is if you are going to draw on personal experiences for your characters, you should be very, very mindful of the memories that can pull up. And again, not to get dwell on specific details, but there has been instances in Romancing the Dungeon where myself and another player have had to either stop recording or at the end of the recording have to go off to another room and both sit down and have a little cry because both of us ended up dragging into things, and it can get very heavy when you're drawing on. I base this on myself, and I base this. It can lead to amazing moments, and I do think, and I'm not just shooting my heart, I loved that moment. I love that moment of having to, like, he got up and he left the party, and the only way the others knew he'd left was he plucked the flower from his hair and just left it where he was set, and that was my signal of I'm out, I'm gone, because I can't handle this. This is too much. And it was that kind of moment of everybody was kind of realizing there's someone who can. It was just, and I remember afterwards being like, that was really not. I mean, it was good, but there was a toll.
Yes, there was a price for the performance in a way. You mentioned, as you were talking, it made me think of 2 things that are, I suppose, important to stress when talking about performance and bringing elements, what you bring to the table. And you hit the nail on the head, I think, with the struggle I was having with AJ and Erin's advice during the interview. It's like, how does this character react to what is happening in front of them? And it ties into the character you were playing, bringing elements from your life in as well. In both of those instances, in your instance and in AJ's instance, it's sort of like we're forcing something we prepared onto the table instead of using our work and using our preparation to react to what's happening on the table more naturally and more organically. And I think that's something, as we go to record the next season of Romancing, it's remembering not to go in with a expectation of what I want to say or what I want to happen or a moment I want to do. And I kind of forced a couple of little like monologue moments into season 2 that I thought would be really cool. And only afterwards, like when it was happening and listening to, I was just like, that didn't feel as like wonderful as I've seen other players do it when they're just kind of off the cup. Like I know, and I think it's an incredible example of this. Another D8 player who plays Grace, incredible at these like wonderful and genuine and at the table moments and monologues that land because they're in relation to what's happening, not this pre-prepared thing coming in. And then the other thing, and I suppose it's just a slight tangent, is your character being a wallflower, quite literally. Being performative or performing at the table doesn't mean being a spotlight hog. It doesn't mean always jumping in. Some of the strangest moments as a DM, especially at cons, this can happen, is you tend to have one quiet person and you're like, I hope they're having fun. And they might have only said like, you know, in terms of combat, they have equal share. But in roleplay moments, they mightn't have had an equal share of time. But then you talk to them afterwards and they go, I had a blast.
Yeah.
That was just enough roleplay for me. I didn't want to do any more. It scares me. So it's important to know quietness or silence or inactivity or stepping out of a scene is still a way to play your character if that's genuinely and authentically what they do.
God, we could actually spend. I'm glad we're actually going to be staying at a while in the kind of the creative and the performative space, and I definitely think there's, because even in chat there's a lot of really wonderful things being kind of discussed and shared. I guess what I want to focus on is that Ben, that idea of the quiet player, because at the start we were saying, you know, one of the things I think that can put people off dipping their toe into TTRPGs is the performance side of it.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how to play a 600-year-old elf cleric who worships the moon. I like, how do I do, like, do I have to wear a halo of like moonflowers? And you know, because you see, I think people see all those, you know, parodies of the hobby in, you know, pop culture shows. They've seen all those bits and pieces and like that, oh god, that's so awkward, that's so cringy. I think everybody in chat who is an active player and a role player, let's use that, the character side of this, it's not cringy at all. Like when everybody is in that space, and it's because we're all immersed, you know, we're all kind of in that zone, we're all in that moment. Nobody is like, I'm sat around a table in Declan's house, you know, with a lot of microphones. It's no, we're in Galeshire and we're dealing with something really weird and funny right now, and like the characters are laughing but we're laughing, and you forget, like the walls fall away, and through the power of storytelling everybody is moved with it. I really think there's an aspect to this as a hobby, and I like, as somebody who is actively creating content for consumption, I think maybe this is also added to it in a way, in that thing of like, you know, people watch actual plays and people listen to podcasts or radio dramas or whatever it might be, and they're seeing performers, you know, like that, crying on camera, you know, and like, you know, being moved to tears and doing amazing accents and really kind of selling that character. And I think that can be very off-putting for people. Like, well, I don't know how to do that. I can't, I can't cry on cue. I can't cry over a gnome warlock, or that means I can't do this. And the one thing I will always say to people is, at my table, and I know it's the same for Ben at Ben's table, you don't have to do a voice. You don't have to be a big personality. You don't even have to talk as your character. You can literally say, well, my character says this.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than enough, because that's role playing, because you are playing the role of a character. Whether you choose to embody the character or have the character as a kind of an extension of you or a separation from you, that's entirely up to you and what you're comfortable with. And because I remember, like, when it first started, I was like, I'm not going to do voices, because I can't do voices. And I quickly realized that one of my favorite things to do is do voices and lean into the silliness of it. I'm not going to say stupidity. Lean into the silliness of it. I have no problem, because I'm comfortable around my friends making an absolute idiot of myself, and having fun with it, because I know when we're laughing, they're not laughing at me. You better not be. I will take levels off characters.
No, of course not. We're laughing with you. Always with you.
Always with you. Can we go back up to, because Ben,
yes,
there was that comment from Subpargo around an item, and I know it's kind of completely different, because it could be a nice way to segue then into our Agony Act as well.
Yes, yeah, and I also think Chad have done an incredible job answering that question. The answer that I would give,
heavy lifting for us.
yeah. But let's jump back up.
So the comment was, new here, hello all, had a question regarding a character build I'm working on. Is it possible in any way in 5e to create a weapon that casts a cantrip or any type of spell when you attack with it within the core rules, or am I just reaching? And then there's a kind of a follow-up, like an addendum to that. I was thinking of a rogue warlock with a crossbow to channel his Eldritch Blast through, because you can't apply your sneak attack unless you attack with the weapon.
I find in these situations, as a GM, because my immediate response to this is chat's response. Whoa, that seems game-breakingly OP. Please don't. But then I look down at the kind of base mechanics of it. And I think at earlier levels, it's not going to break your game as much as you think it is, provided you're not adding crossbow damage and Eldritch Blast damage and sneak attack damage. But if we're comparing D8s and D8s, I don't see why not. Just for flair, I always have this rule where, and this kind of counts as performance and creativity in a character. It's not always about the voice of the character, and it's not always about the who they are, what their emotions are, etc., but how they appear and how the world sees them. That's still performing. So a great example of that would be, I raise my crossbow and the Eldritch energy crackles down my hand, letting off a blast of voltage Eldritch disaster magic towards someone. Provided the dice you're using are kind of the same, I don't really mind what you say before you attack. You can say, I take out my 17 swords, I spin them around, and you're still rolling D8s. Like the damage is still the same. So I would say chat to your DM a little bit about, are you okay if flavor or narrative alone, we say that it's kind of Eldritch Blast, and we can work out the kind of number crunch side of it, as in maybe a little of the magic fizzles off when it gets channeled into something else, so that it stays the same weapon damage as a crossbow, as the game and the structure is there to maintain. It allows you to add your sneak attack, but as far as the world is concerned, as far as the story and your imaginations are concerned, yeah, it's loaded full of Eldritch Blast.
So my brain went into, again, I didn't even go, this is OP and going to break stuff. I'm constantly breaking things. And then, oh god, okay, quick, someone get a band-aid. I have to fix the world very quickly. So as a concept, I think that's really, really cool. As somebody who has a rogue in the group who also has a fighter and is able to make a shadow clone of themselves, fucking hate rogues and sneak attack. But immediately, Sapargo, my brain went into kind of similar to Ben with that. One, ask the DM, and I think Eerie Dude has always say ask your DM, because only they can truly understand how broken something is and how to deal with it. And if your DM is constantly breaking stuff, they're going to be really good at making sure it's broken, but it fits the rest of the broken pieces. I'm a sucker for a person coming to me and saying, "Hey, look, this is the thing I think I'd like to do with my character. It's not in the rules, and that crossbow with the cantrip isn't in the. You're not going to get that in the content. That's not going to be there in the. Oh yeah, it's in that on that page in that book. But it's a homebrew. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a homebrew, and the danger with any homebrew is, as Chad have said and Ben has said, it can be a bit breaky and OP and a bit like, oh wow, okay, that's that out of the way. I would say what I'd be kind of doing it is, because I love the idea of a rogue warlock with a crossbow and literally shooting off Eldritch Blast instead of crossbow bolts. But my take on that would be, I love that as an idea, as a character. 100%, I'm going to make that work with the rogue thing, but I'm probably going to say, let's taper the dice rolls down so that you're not actually going to be rolling the full D8 for Eldritch Blast, because it can't be, because it's not technically Eldritch Blast. Now, that's one way I would do it. The other way I would do it would go, yes, yeah, 100%, you do it. That's your action and your bonus action done and dusted, because you had to shoot the crossbow and then you had to cast the cantrip. So you taking that shot is the action and the bonus action done and dusted, and then roll off the dice and away we go with it, because the trade there is, well, you're squandering two things that you can do on your turn for one, and it might miss. So again, we've all said it, chat have said it, talk to your DM. If you want to keep talking to us about it, the Discord server, or the D8 Dungeon Discord server over in TTRPG discussions, a great spot to ask that this is what we were talking about. Has anybody else got any ideas? But I do think go back to your DM and see. And if
here's a little trick when talking to your DM, because you're playing in a game with other people. You can't be the one person at the table who has the super cool thing and everyone else has not the super cool thing. You won't find it all that satisfying to play. I almost guarantee it. It gets sickly boring very quick when it's like, my character gets rid of everyone, and you look around to your friends and they go, thanks. It's not satisfying. So I often find, and if I'm going to ask for something that's super, super cool, I will either put something on it that causes a consequence. So a low tip here is, can I have this thing, this crossbow that fires Eldritch Blast? However, and you pick a dice, like on an 8, it explodes on a full damage of it, it explodes my crossbow. And suddenly you don't have it anymore because it's too powerful. It can't contain the magic in it. On a critical fail, I have to, or every time I roll, I have to see if it recharges, like a breath weapon. Something that puts a dampener on it. You'll notice that this was in the very first Critical Role campaign with Percy and Taliesin Jaffe. A gunslinger wasn't really a thing. And it was a little bit OP, but it had ways to break. So it wasn't always reliable. And so adding that in is pretty handy. The other way to do it, and you'll find this more satisfying, sometimes ask your DM and just getting it and adding to your sheet. You're like, okay, and you don't appreciate it as much. Give it to your DM as a desire you want for your character to accomplish, and let them make a story out of it. Because suddenly now you have NPCs who are artificers, who are trying to figure out how to do these things. You have a quest in that. You have a quest in, like, go to this town, speak to this master artificer. Within that becomes do a task for them. Make it an adventure out of it, so that your reward doesn't always have to be a level or XP. It can be the thing you want for your character. And then suddenly the table's involved in that, and they're not all that pissed off that you just got handed a good thing for no effort.
There's a really good question from Eerie Dude. Have we talked about how to play characters that are in different intelligence levels to yourself? Like how to play someone who's very dumb, but you're aware of things, or playing a very smart character, but you're not that bright. I I love to play really annoyingly thick shopkeepers, like the worst shopkeepers you can possibly ever. It's like, how do they even have a business? Their business is really annoying Sam, and that's what keeps them going. I like, it is that thing of like my car, like I know the answer to this. I know the answer to this riddle. Like me, the person does, but my character is not the intelligent Joe. They're the barbarian who collects rocks that look like clouds, because they're happy, wholesome, lovable, rock baby. They're not the smart one, and the group are sitting around scratching their heads because they can't figure it out. It is that. It's one of those things where, again, above the table, it's that conversation we have, I think, with everybody kind of playing. And something I've learned over the last kind of couple of years as a DM is never, ever give the players... Let's use that sort of like the puzzle scenario where we're all playing a bunch of, himbos, and we come up to, that riddle door. And well, we're all beautiful, we're all muscular. Nobody, knows what the door is on about as characters, but as players, yep, that's what it is. But a DM will never, or a DM, I believe a DM should never have a puzzle that only has one solution. Like that's the for the DMs in the group kind of going, yeah, I really want to know how to balance that with my players. Rewards that dumb characters, innocent way of like approaching the puzzle of like, okay, that's a, that's not the answer, but actually it fits, and it's a good fit, and it's a way of, so for DMs looking at it, that's a way of kind of like rewarding characters approaching it from their character's point of view. As somebody who very rarely plays in TTRPGs, I just DM. All my characters are generally super intelligent, super evil shitebags. So I'm very lucky. That comes natural.
They're humble too.
So humble.
I think there's an interesting thing, like when I'm DMing and if I'm running a group, I never, like, if someone has a -2 in intelligence, I'm never going to punish them for figuring something out as the player, because usually part of the game is them figuring it out as a player. And it is tough to kind of figure out a way to role play that, but you're already smarter than your character. So I trust that you'll be able to go, a rock tumbles down the hill, knocks my barbarian on the head. I shake and I look at a cloud and go, oh, the doctor was his mother. And like have luck be your role play excuse for figuring something out. Because I'll tell you who tends to figure things out and walk through life unscathed. Idiots. They're the best. Whereas it's a lot harder, I think, to play someone smarter than you. It's that paradox of not knowing the possibilities of intelligence and being like, well, what would a really smart person? I can put myself. It's like it's spell slots, like a higher level spell can always fit within a lower level spell slot. Or sorry, the other way, whatever way it works, you can always cast a lower level spell at a higher level. It will always like fill it. You can't do it the other way around. And so thankfully in 5e anyway, intelligence tends to be a dump stat. So a lot of people are walking around without that intelligence unless you're playing a wizard.
Strength is always my dump stat. Like always. Even if I'm going to be playing the brute, I'm like, I'll be a fast brute. I'm not going to be a strong brute.
Be a dexterous brute. Yeah. But it is a really interesting conundrum. I find, like, it's quite humbling. AJ, the character I play in Ronson Dungeon, his intelligence is 80, so he has a -1 to it. And I'm like, I'm smarter than AJ. And then I'm at the table and I'm like, I'm not.
Eerie Dude has come back with a kind of their own kind of take on it. And I that's brilliant. I play a barbarian who's the party's father figure. He's not bright, but he's also very experienced. So whenever I have to be smart, I just become the father who hasn't done math in years, helping their child with their homework. I don't get it, but you've got it, son. And then oh wait, I remember. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And it is that thing of like, well, they might not have had, as much schooling or, academics in their background, but there's loads of ways to play intelligence. And it is, I think, actually it's experience. And they worked, briefly in a gym where they had to, keep the money, and that's how they know how to count. That there's loads of ways to kind of play into those bits and pieces.
It's
Yeah.
also partly, and not to put the responsibility on the DM, it's a little bit the DM's responsibility when it comes to high intelligence in a passive way to give your character the information that would just be there, because we're already doing it from a perceptive point of view. Like, you see this, you do this, this is what you would know. I'm only ever going to tell you what you would know. So it's kind of the DM's job to go, oh, on you, the smart one, you'd know that this is actually the symbol of, the ancient gods protecting this realm because of your studies in the arcane arts. So at times, if you're struggling to find a high intelligence character satisfying to play because you're like, well, I don't know what's going on, turn to the one person who tends to know everything that's happening, or they'll give you permission and go, well, what do you think? And whatever you say, because you're smart, will become kind of canon. It makes me think of the puzzle problem. There's one exception, I think, to the rule of one solution to the puzzle. If it's narratively makes sense, if it's the wizard's tower and they've protected it, and the party don't need to go in there. Obviously, if you're trying to push them somewhere, don't have one solution. They won't get there. But if it's the, sitting with a crossword, scratching your chin, come back to it in a couple of sessions kind of puzzle, I think I leave it with them. Just kind of go like, there you go. And once you figure that out, the gold is yours. But the reason it's so hard to crack is because it's the smartest person, the wisest of the wises. Domain isn't going to be accessible except for those who they deem worthy.
Before we get into our Hagnant,
yes.
can I just, because I think this goes back to something that Zool44 had said at the very start, and that prepping, checking over the notes and stuff like that before the session. If you were playing that highly intelligent character, whether it's the wizard, the artificer, the cleric, whatever it might, hell, you might even be like an incredibly intelligent fighter. Going to the DM and going, hey, look, we're actually entering into this city, and I've got a +3 to my intelligence. History is something I'm proficient in. Could you give me a couple of notes that I can have ready for my character, so that when the players go, what's the deal with that? It doesn't, you as the DM don't have to suddenly have an NPC pop up and explain it. That I can do it for you because my character read this book. That I'll come up with the name of the book, but you've given me the information. So now, and I'm going to come across as intelligent because I'm well read and I'm well traveled and all these other things. So again, like prepping those spells and checking over your items and features and stuff like that, talking to the DM ahead of time to be like, hey, actually, is there anything with my intelligence and my experience that would give me not the edge on the party, but like that I can kind of like pepper in for my role play, for my performance, because I think that's going to make the most amount of sense. Other thing I can tell you to do is, if you are playing the highly intelligent one at the table, and everybody else is playing like the quick one, the smart, the dumb one, the heavy hitter, whatever it might be, lean into it and absolutely act as pretentious and as academic as you'd like. And if they call you on it, just call them dumb. Like
you wouldn't understand. It's operating at a level far higher than you ever.
This is way above your intelligence. So leave that to us up here. You don't quite get it. Lean into it heavy, and like, even if you're in the wrong, keep leaning. That's what all the smart people do. We have a DM conundrum, and we're supposed to play this 2 weeks ago. We didn't get around to it because we got sidetracked, and we've got sidetracked again. But I don't want to leave it go. So this week's Hagnant is, again, not too far out for what we're talking about, but
No, I don't think so.
check it out. Dear Haggany Ant, I'm in a real campaign crisis here. As a game master, my brain is overflowing with inspiration. I've got more plot twists, quests, and quirky NPCs than I know what to do with. My mental bag of holding is stuffed to the brim, and now I'm stuck trying to decide what to roll with and what to keep in the shadows. My problem is, I want to use everything, but I know throwing it all into one campaign could turn into a chaotic mess that not even a nat 20 could save. How do I decide which quests to embark on and which to leave in the dungeon? Should I find some way to fit it all in, or am I doomed to be TPK'd by my own creativity? Sincerely, Overloaded Game Master.
Welcome back. You're a dude. You have thoughts about this question. I would love to hear your answer in chat. Please do drop it in and we will make sure to shout it out. I don't mind going first, going second. Go first. All right. I was thinking about this recently. I was chatting to someone. Where'd they been? They'd been to Sweden. And they'd been to the Edvard. They'd been to Sweden. I think they'd been to Sweden because I think that's where the Edvard Munch Museum is. As far as I know, they'd been to Sweden and Norway, so maybe it must have been Norway actually, because he did work for Ibsen, I think, for theater stuff. And the sort of dilemma between too many ideas, what do I do with them? How do I cram them all in? And then the kind of flip of that is the golden goose sort of thing. What if I run out of ideas? What if I never have any chance to do this again? And for me, I think it's one of those things where write it down. One, not every idea has to go into your game. It could become a book. It could become a drawing. It could become a little noodling of a script in the back of your brain. It could become a song. And it could become all of those things. Ideas by the very good ones, the ones that are sort of fertile ground for just pulling and pulling and pulling, they don't diminish. It's great. You can just come back to the same idea again and again and again in different mediums. So do drop it into game if you want. But in terms of playing it out, it can be a little bit unsatisfying, I think, as a player when something harks back to how I play sometimes, which is just shoehorning something I want in from a character and then being like, didn't feel good. But talk to your party. Let them know I've got this idea for the session. How about instead of continuing the main campaign, we do a little campfire session. It's a little kind of side quest story. Or we play a different system because I want to play this new system that I'm looking at. Or if there is a way to work it because you know your world well enough, hold on to it. It's going to stay there. It's not going to let you know it'll go. Like, good ideas don't disappear. And then, iterate. There's nothing stopping you putting in your game. There's nothing stopping you doing it again in a different game. Going to a con, running it there. Just doing it over and over and over again. The only person who's ever going to get bored by the idea is you. And the good thing about that is, well, you got to let your system. So it's, if you're bored by it, you've done your job. You're like, well, I no longer have that problem. And the reason I brought up Edvard Munch is because if you look at their work, they're one of my favorite artists. There's 4 versions of Scream. And even within that, there's also despair and anxiety, which are on the same pier. If you look at the backgrounds of those paintings, they're in the same setting, the same place. Doing something over and over and over again and iterating on it is the way to polish an idea, to hone it, kind of scrape away the rough edges of it and get it sort of pure and perfect. There's a phrase I quite like, and I use at work a lot, which is some parts of an idea are clay and some parts are glass, and you need to know which ones are which. The glass you cannot change. It's integral to it. You mess with that, it's no longer the idea. The clay, you can move it around. You can kind of like fix it, reskin it. And that's what I mean by being like, make it a poem. make it a song, make it a drawing. It will want to express itself. So express. Instead of, if you're looking for something to do some evening, sit down with a blank canvas. The scariest thing about blank page is not knowing what to put there. Guess what? You know what to put there. So that's all you need to do.
I'm going to read out Eerie Dude's response, and then I'm going to come back to my own kind of thoughts on it. But Eerie Dude has said, I'm very similar in this way. I'm very creative and tend to want to tell many stories. There's two ways I deal with it. The first is write it down. I have a brainstorming notebook and often do lots of thinking before bringing my quests to my players. And the second then is do more than one game. I have just checking, Eerie Dude, you're not me from an alternate dimension.
Eerie Dude.
Are you like? Are you me? I just want to know because I am so guilty of those are two things that I do. I will write something down it just like it's that thing of I wake up with something I'm like, oh, that's actually a really good, yes, I am you but eerier. Well, fair enough, okay, I'll take that. I hope you're doing good. And 6 cats is too many cats, I'm just telling you. So just in case you haven't caught up to that many cats yet, I'm just letting you know. That's something I do. I will write down the idea, and it like that. I love a notebook. I love. I've one in front of me, and I've been like drawing and like writing on kind of bits and pieces that Chat had said or Ben had said. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's about. I'm gonna write that down. And even earlier on, during the interview, Ben and I were talking about something very briefly, and I just had an idea for a different thing. I'm going to write that down right now. And I wonder if that's something. The other thing that I do, other than run loads of games.
Yeah, the best voice notes to get from Declan, and they happen more often than you think, is, so I had an idea. And that pause is not knowing if the person receiving the message will be excited or exasperated. Always excited, never exasperated.
There's a reason people are starting to think you're my husband. Because my actual husband is like, no, just go tell Ben.
No. What we have is we write letters to each other like long friends besieged by war. We're more authentically husband.
We were roommates.
Yeah. They were good friends in the day.
Actually that would be phenomenal. Like 100 years when you and I have both passed on, and then like someone's like listening to our voice notes. It's like, oh, they were just really good friends who loved D&D.
Brothers, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, aside from running lots of campaigns, which I am very guilty of, the other thing I start doing is those ideas that I've written down, and it's not quite I don't have the same approach to it that Ben does, about like translating it into something else, because I think I'm very, and I don't, maybe Eerie Dude, if we're the same here, I wonder if we're the same this way. I also see that comment, Ben, and I heard you type it, so expect a voice note right after this.
I was responding to Emma's earlier thing about me shutting up.
Okay. Oh, fair enough. I just want to know what I've started doing is I often weigh the idea up, and sometimes because what I've noticed is if we go back to Abra and the song, sometimes a song will trigger an idea because the lyrics or even just the emotions in it have made me feel something like, oh, that's actually something that I could do here. And I will often turn to a friend and be like, hey, I'm thinking of this thing. It's for this other thing. Can you tell me if this is a good thing? Or can you weigh in on this with me? Can you and like, I don't know if Twiggy is still in the chat, but Twiggy and I we were roommates. And I would constantly, I would come home from the gym, go into the shower, and then come out of the shower and go, oh my God, I've just got this idea. And then they have to sit there for 25 minutes and listen to me rant and rave about something. And Ben gets those in the voice note formats, which usually start with, howdy, I'll apologize now because this is going to be a lengthy one. But what I have started doing, I'm going to kind of try and wrap up what I'm saying. What I've started doing is I've kind of started kind of evaluating my idea. Because sometimes it's that thing of like, oh, I just watched that. Oh, I just read that. Oh, I just listened to that. that was a great feeling. I want to try to translate that into what I'm doing next. And sometimes it's like, no, it's not a, that was great in the context of what I just experienced, and I'm going to leave it there. I will pick something out of it. So that's why writing it down is so important. And the best ideas do stick around. They linger in a big way, because if you're dwelling on it, it means, there's something that has kind of hooked you. And if it's hooked you, it's going to hook the table. But I like to sort of stew on it for a little while. I don't. My advice to that DM is, do you have a sketchbook or a whiteboard? Sometimes I just write all my ideas that I've already written into a whiteboard. I do that. I call it bubbling. So I put everything into a bubble, and I will often kind of go, oh, and I can actually tie this one into this one, and it's mind mapping. Is a great technique for that, and like sifting through something. But yes, I do. I'm a teacher. I have access to a whiteboard. Lots of them. But I, like, Ben, you and I could go on and on and on and on and on about this,
and we will next time.
We will. So what? Oh, okay. So there's two. Okay. The chat might be full of multiples of me.
It's happened. The ideas have splintered. They've grown their own sentence.
Yay! About time. I am going to get us ready to raid.
Yes.
So if you're with us, stick around, because we like to hop into another channel and spread a little bit of the love. And if you want to keep the conversation going and talking about character performances and progression, stuff like that, then do pop over to our Discord, D8 Dungeon. And I would love to keep this conversation going. But that's all from me. I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of Ben while I get ready to bounce us out of here. And over to you, Ben.
Should be good to go. Let me see what we have for our final story. In local theatre news, we're glad to announce the return of the Bumbleduck Bards, who gone missing for a few days there. No, they weren't just rehearsing or deep in the process. Turns out they were swallowed by the Underrealm and forced to perform all of Kevin James's body of work until they either died laughing or 1,000 years passed. Thankfully, all still alive, and what a life they've lived. It's a bit of a real Narnia situation. See the world, kill some people, return to the body of your 8-year-old self. They look haunted. Well, that's all from us in the studio this week. A huge thanks for joining us in chat. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, same crit time, same crit channel. Now, let's raid. Here we go. Everyone join in.
While we get to raid, I'm going to bring our credits up.
Nice. Thanks, everyone.